The vast hall of the Galactic Empire's Grand Council was filled with alien leaders from across the stars. They all gathered to witness yet another momentous event, one where they would show off their immense power to the galaxy. The human delegation had arrived, their small fleet of ships barely noticeable against the backdrop of the Empire's towering warships. At the center of the room stood Captain Nathan Creed, the leader of Earth's military delegation. He was an experienced officer, a man of few words, but his eyes burned with determination. He knew that humanity was about to face one of the biggest challenges of its existence, the Galactic Empire. The Empire had been the dominant force in the galaxy for centuries. They controlled countless planets, vast resources, and fleets of unimaginable power. To them, humans were nothing more than a tiny, insignificant speck in the grand scheme of things. Earth's military was nothing to fear, or so the Empire thought. As the council meeting began, an alien leader, a towering being with silver skin and glowing eyes, stepped forward. His name was Cathar, a warlord known for his sharp wit and brutal strength. He looked at Captain Creed with a smirk. "So, humans," Cathar began, his voice echoing through the chamber. "Tell me, what kind of weapons do you bring to the table? A few missiles? Some outdated ships?" He laughed loudly, his voice booming across the room. His laughter was joined by several other high-ranking officers, all of them amused by the mere thought of Earth's so-called military. Captain Creed stood tall, his expression calm. He had anticipated this moment, the mocking, the belittling. But inside, he wasn't angry. He was confident. He knew that his people had something the Empire would never expect. "We may not have the fleets you possess, or the advanced technology you flaunt," Captain Creed spoke, his voice steady, "but we have something stronger. Determination. We are humans, and we fight for our survival. That alone is more powerful than any weapon you've ever known." Cathar's smile faded, replaced with a look of curiosity. "Is that so?" he asked, raising an eyebrow. "Well, let's see how far that determination will get you." As the meeting continued, the humans listened in silence as the Empire made its plans to dominate the galaxy. Cathar and his allies spoke of conquests, resources, and war, but the humans knew something the Empire did not. They had a secret. A ship, unlike any the galaxy had ever seen, lay hidden in a distant sector of space. It was Earth's ace in the hole, a dreadnought that would turn the tides of any battle. But for now, it remained a mystery, waiting for the right moment to make its grand debut. Captain Creed glanced out of the window, looking at the stars in the distance. He knew that the Empire would soon regret underestimating humanity. The Sovereign, Earth's greatest weapon, was ready, and it was only a matter of time before the galaxy learned just how powerful the human race could be. The human fleet, small and modest compared to the massive fleets of the Galactic Empire, was stationed far from the center of attention. It was a remote corner of space, far from the eyes of the Empire. But here, in the dark void between stars, something extraordinary was about to unfold. Captain Nathan Creed paced the command center of the human flagship, the Vanguard. His mind was focused on the task ahead, the one secret that could turn the tide in humanity's favor. It had taken years to build, countless resources, and more sacrifices than anyone could count. Yet, only a handful of people knew of its existence. "The Sovereign is ready, Captain," Lieutenant Sarah Hale said, stepping up to his side. She was one of the few who had been part of the project, and she had worked tirelessly on the ship's systems. Her eyes sparkled with excitement, yet a shadow of worry still lingered. "Let's do it," Creed said with a nod. "Prepare for the unveiling." A soft hum filled the room as the crew went to work. Outside the windows, the stars seemed to shimmer as the massive shape of the Sovereign began to emerge from its hidden dock, a behemoth of metal and technology, unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. It was massive, far larger than any known ship. Its dark, angular shape seemed to swallow the light around it, a testament to its design and purpose. The Sovereign wasn't just a ship, It was a fortress, engineered for one purpose: to strike fear into the hearts of any who thought humanity weak. It had weapons beyond anything the Empire had seen: a massive energy cannon that could obliterate an entire fleet in a single shot, defense systems capable of deflecting any energy weapon, and a fleet of autonomous drones that could dismantle enemies at the microscopic level. It was the product of human ingenuity, resilience, and the refusal to back down. The Empire had no idea what was coming. As the crew of the Vanguard watched from their monitors, the Sovereign slowly moved into full view. There were gasps from some of the crew members. They knew the importance of the ship, but seeing it in person was something else entirely. It was like staring at a god, a creature of legend brought to life. It was an incredible sight, an embodiment of all the hard work and struggle that had gone into it. "We've done it," Lieutenant Hale whispered, her voice filled with awe. Creed stepped forward, his expression hardening. "It's time to test it." He gave the order, and the Sovereign began to power up its engines. Slowly, it started to move, its engines glowing with energy. The sheer power of the ship shook the space around it as it prepared to leave the dock. "There's no turning back now," Creed muttered to himself. He knew that once this ship was seen by the rest of the galaxy, there would be no going back. The Empire would know that humanity was no longer a small, insignificant race. They would know that humanity had the power to rival even the most feared forces in the galaxy. The hum of the engines filled the command center of the Vanguard as it cruised alongside the Sovereign. The vast Dreadnought moved with a power and grace that no one had expected. Outside the ship's window, the distant stars seemed to move in slow motion as the ship glided through the void of space. Captain Creed stood at the bridge, staring at the massive ship. It was awe-inspiring, but he knew that the real test was just beginning. The Sovereign wasn't just for show. It had to work. If it didn't, all the sacrifices and years of work would be for nothing. "Is everything ready?" Creed asked, turning to Lieutenant Hale, who was at the console, watching the ship's systems carefully. "Everything's green, Captain," she replied, her fingers moving swiftly across the controls. "We're ready for live tests. The energy weapons are fully charged, and the drones are primed for activation." Creed nodded. "Start the first phase. I want to see how it handles a full simulation of a battle." Hale pressed a button on her console, and the dark space around them suddenly lit up as a series of holographic targets appeared in front of the ship. The targets were mock ships, programmed to act like enemy vessels. They moved quickly, mimicking the tactics of an advanced fleet. As the first target approached, a loud warning alarm went off. "Incoming," shouted one of the crew members. Without missing a beat, Creed gave the order. "Activate the drones." A swarm of small, sleek drones shot out from the Sovereign, moving with precision and speed. They swarmed around the first target, surrounding it. Within seconds, the drones fired, releasing bursts of energy that tore the target apart. The ship exploded in a flash of light, leaving only debris floating in space. "Phase 1 complete," Hale reported, her voice full of excitement. "The drones are more effective than we expected. They're overwhelming the targets before they even get close." Creed allowed himself a small smile. It was working perfectly. "Now for the second phase," he said. "Charge the main cannon." The Sovereign's main cannon was its most powerful weapon, capable of delivering a blast that could devastate an entire fleet. As the crew charged the cannon, the ship vibrated slightly under the immense power it was preparing to unleash. "Main cannon ready," reported one of the engineers. "Fire," Creed commanded. A blinding light filled the bridge as the cannon released a massive, focused beam of energy. The blast shot through the target at the farthest distance, vaporizing it instantly. The force of the blast created a shockwave, rippling through space and sending tremors through the ship. Creed watched closely, his eyes narrowed with concentration. The blast was perfect. The Sovereign had passed the test, and then some. "Phase 2 complete," Hale said, her voice steady but filled with awe. The cannon is beyond anything we could have imagined. It's stronger than we anticipated. Creed stepped forward, his mind already racing. The Sovereign wasn't just a ship, it was a weapon, a tool for humanity's survival in a galaxy full of threats. He knew that once they revealed it to the Galactic Empire, everything would change. But for now, he had to focus. There was more testing to be done. "Prepare for Phase 3, Creed said, his voice filled with determination. "Let's see how it holds up in a real battle." The silence in the Grand Council chamber was almost deafening. Scifi, the silver-skinned warlord, stood at the front of the room, a smug expression on his face as he looked down at the human delegation. The mockery of Earth's military had barely ended, and the laughter still echoed in his ears. But now, something had changed. There was a quiet tension in the air. Scifi had expected the humans to cower, to back down in the face of the Empire's might. But instead, they had stood tall, their captain offering only a few calm words in response. His confidence was unsettling, but what disturbed Scifi even more was the nagging feeling that something was hidden beneath the surface. The humans had promised their determination, but Scifi knew that alone couldn't defeat a civilization as powerful as the Empire. "Are we finished with these weak humans?" another council member asked. His voice was cold and mocking, yet it held a note of curiosity, as though he, too, sensed there was more to the human race than met the eye. Scifi turned to face the council. "We will not waste time on them. Let them show us their strength if they truly think they have something to offer." With that, the council agreed. The Empire would continue its plans for galactic dominance, and the humans would be forgotten. But in the corner of the room, a shadowy figure spoke up. "The humans have something different," the figure said, his voice quiet but sharp. His name was Jorith, an alien of immense power and influence. Unlike many others in the Empire, he saw the potential threat in underestimating Earth. Scifi's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" Jorith leaned forward, his gaze intense. "I have received word from our spies. The humans are not as they seem. They have been working on a secret weapon, something the galaxy has never seen. I would not be so quick to dismiss them." Scifi chuckled. "A weapon? What could the humans possibly create that could challenge the might of the Empire?" Jorith didn't respond immediately, but his silence spoke volumes. He knew more than he let on, and his expression made it clear that the Empire had underestimated humanity. Meanwhile, on the outskirts of Empire-controlled space, Captain Creed stood at the helm of the Vanguard, staring out into the starry expanse. The Sovereign was fully operational now, its systems running smoothly. It was ready. The humans had shown their hand, and the Empire had taken the bait. Creed had no doubt that the next few days would be crucial. He and his crew had to be prepared for the moment the Empire realized just how dangerous the Sovereign truly was. "Lieutenant Hale," Captain Creed said, turning to face his second-in-command. "Prepare the fleet. The Empire is about to make their move. When they come, we'll be ready." Hale nodded, her face serious. "Understood, Captain. We'll be ready." Creed gazed out the window once more. The time for hiding was over. Humanity would soon show the Empire the true power of their creation. There would be no turning back now. The vast emptiness of space stretched endlessly before them as the human fleet, led by the Vanguard, cruised silently through the stars. The Sovereign was close behind, its massive form cutting through the darkness like a shadow. Captain Creed stood at the bridge of the Vanguard, watching the screen as the first signs of the Empire's fleet appeared on the edge of their sensors. It was impossible to ignore the sheer size of the approaching armada. The Empire had sent its best, a fleet of warships as intimidating as they were numerous. Their ships glowed with alien technology, their weapons primed and ready for battle. They had come, as expected, to crush the humans and remind them of their place in the galaxy. "Empire fleet on approach, Captain," Lieutenant Hale said, her voice steady, but there was a hint of tension in her tone. "They're moving fast. It looks like they intend to engage." Creed took a deep breath, his eyes narrowing. He had been preparing for this moment for weeks. The humans had no illusions. They were outnumbered. But they had something the Empire couldn't even begin to imagine. "Open a channel to the fleet," Creed ordered. "Tell them to hold position and prepare for combat." The crew moved quickly, and soon the bridge of the Vanguard was filled with a tense stillness as they awaited the first shot. But just as the fleet came into full view, an alien voice boomed through the communication system. "Humans," the voice sneered. "You are foolish to think you can stand against the might of the Empire. We will show you what real power looks like." It was Cathar, the warlord who had laughed at the humans only days earlier. Creed kept his face calm, but inside, he was focused. This was it. The Sovereign was their trump card, and it was time to play it. "Open fire," Creed commanded. The crew followed his orders without hesitation. The Sovereign's energy cannons powered up, the ship's core humming with energy as its massive weapons prepared to unleash their fury. At first, it seemed as though nothing had happened. Then, a flash of light burst from the Dreadnought, its massive beam cutting through space with devastating power. The blast struck the first wave of enemy ships, and in an instant, they were obliterated. The energy from the shot was so powerful that the ship's destruction sent shockwaves rippling through space, and the surrounding enemy ships scattered, unsure of how to respond. Creed could feel the atmosphere on the bridge shift. The Empire had clearly not expected this. The Sovereign was not only capable of inflicting destruction, it was doing so with an ease that made the Empire's fleet look like children's toys. "Did we just do that?" Hale asked, her voice full of disbelief. "Yes," Creed said simply. "Now, don't let up. Bring the drones online." The Sovereign's hull opened like the mouth of a beast, and thousands of small, sleek drones shot out into the battle. They darted through space with lightning speed, attacking any ship that dared come close. Within moments, the first wave of Empire ships was swarming with drones, their weapons useless against the relentless assault. The humans watched as the drones dismantled the enemy fleet, striking fast and hard. The Empire, once so sure of their superiority, was now caught off guard. The Sovereign was proving to be more than just a match for their fleet. It was turning the tide of the battle. "Keep the pressure on," Creed ordered, his voice cold with determination. "We're not done yet." The battle raged on, the stars around the human fleet glowing bright with the explosion of enemy ships. The Sovereign was a force of nature, cutting through the Empire's fleet like a blade through paper. The Empire had never seen anything like it before. No amount of firepower, no shield, could stop the human Dreadnought. Captain Creed stood at the bridge of the Vanguard, watching the unfolding chaos. The sound of laser fire and explosions echoed through the ship's communication system, but the bridge was eerily calm. The crew was focused, moving with practiced efficiency. "Status report," Creed barked, his voice firm. "Enemy fleet is in disarray, Captain," Lieutenant Hale replied. "The drones have disabled 2/3 of their ships, and the Sovereign is making quick work of the rest." The Empire wasn't prepared for this. Creed allowed himself a brief nod, but his eyes remained sharp. The victory wasn't certain yet. He had seen battles turn around in an instant, and the Empire's fleet was still dangerous. Their warships may have been falling, but their flagship, the Vengeful Star, was still intact. It was the largest ship in their fleet, capable of withstanding incredible damage. Creed knew it would take more than just the Sovereign to bring it down. "Prepare the Sovereign for the next phase," Creed said. "Target the Vengeful Star. We end this now." The crew moved swiftly. The Sovereign had taken down most of the enemy ships, but the battle wasn't over. The Empire had something they had been saving. A counterattack, something worse than anything humanity had seen so far. "Captain," Hale said suddenly, her voice a little more anxious than before. "The Vengeful Star is charging its main weapon. They're about to fire." Creed didn't waste a second. "All shields to maximum. Get us in close." Now, the Vengeful Star fired. A massive beam of energy shot from its core, faster than anything humanity had encountered. It surged toward the Sovereign, the sheer power of it tearing through space, leaving a trail of destruction behind it. The human Dreadnought's shields flared, absorbing the brunt of the attack. The Sovereign rocked violently, but it held firm. Creed's hands clenched around the armrests of his chair. He knew that the Sovereign was resilient, but he had never seen anything like that before. For a moment, it seemed as if the ship might not survive. "We've lost some systems," one of the engineers called out, but there was no panic in his voice. "Shields are at 75%, but the main cannons are still operational." "Good," Creed replied. "Now, give me the shot we need." The crew worked quickly, moving through their positions with military precision. The Sovereign powered up its main cannon once more, the ship's core humming with energy. "Target locked," Hale reported. "Fire," Creed ordered. A beam of unimaginable force shot from the Sovereign, blasting through space with such power that it seemed to bend the very fabric of reality. The beam struck the vengeful star, hitting its core with perfect precision. The massive flagship shuddered violently, and a flash of light engulfed the ship. The vengeful star disintegrated in seconds, its powerful shields no match for the concentrated energy from the Sovereign. The enemy fleet watched in stunned silence as their flagship was obliterated. The remaining Empire ships began to retreat, scattering in every direction, trying to escape the overwhelming power of the human Dreadnought. Creed exhaled slowly, his eyes never leaving the screen. The battle was won, but he knew this was only the beginning. The Sovereign had proven its worth, but now humanity had made its mark on the galaxy. The Empire would never underestimate them again. "Let them run," Creed said quietly. "We've shown them what we're capable of." The once confident Empire fleet was now in disarray. What had started as a grand show of superiority had quickly turned into a desperate retreat. The Sovereign had proven itself in battle, and the Empire's pride was shattered. But even in defeat, the Empire was not one to surrender easily. On the bridge of the Vanguard, Captain Creed stood, his eyes fixed on the display. The enemy ships were retreating, but the battle wasn't over yet. The Empire's commanders were no strangers to losing battles. They had lost before, and they would fight again, harder than ever. "They're regrouping," Lieutenant Hale said, her voice tense. "It looks like they're preparing for one final strike." Creed nodded. "The Sovereign can't be defeated that easily. But we must be ready. I don't think they're going to go quietly." As the last of the Empire's retreating ships scattered, a massive shadow loomed ahead. It was the Shadow Reaper, the Empire's last line of defense. It was a ship unlike any other, a colossal fortress that could turn the tide of battle with its sheer size and firepower. The Shadow Reaper was armed with weapons capable of wiping out entire fleets in a single strike. "The Shadow Reaper is coming at us full speed," Hale said, her voice a little shaky. "It's bigger than anything we've ever seen. They're coming for us with everything they've got." "Hold steady," Creed replied, his voice calm. He could feel the tension in the air, but there was no time for fear. The Sovereign was humanity's greatest weapon, and it was time to prove it. Prepare the Sovereign for one last strike. We end this now. The Sovereign's engines hummed as it moved into position. The enemy ship was huge, dwarfing the Sovereign, but the humans had learned the power of precision. They had learned how to take on much stronger foes and come out victorious. The Sovereign's weapons were ready, its drones poised for another assault. "Get us in range," Creed ordered, gripping the armrests of his chair. "All weapons are to be ready." The Empire's flagship, the Shadow Reaper, closed the distance rapidly, its weapons charging. It fired a massive blast, a beam of destruction that headed straight for the Sovereign. The Sovereign's shields flared under the pressure, but they held firm. The blast was powerful, but the Dreadnought's shields absorbed it with ease. "Shields holding at 50%, one of the engineers reported. "We're good for now." Creed's eyes remained locked on the view screen. He could see the Shadow Reaper preparing another shot. The Empire's desperation was clear. They knew they couldn't win, but they weren't going to give up without a fight. "We can't let them get another shot off," Creed said, his voice sharp. "Fire the main cannon. Full power." The Sovereign's massive cannon powered up, its core glowing with energy. For a moment, time seemed to slow as the beam of destruction gathered. The Sovereign fired, and the blast tore through space, striking the Shadow Reaper head-on. The Empire's flagship shuddered violently as the energy from the blast ripped through its hull. The once mighty ship began to break apart, its weapons falling silent. The Shadow Reaper had been destroyed, and with it, the Empire's final hope. The remaining Empire ships scattered, too afraid to fight any longer. The battle was over. Creed stood quietly, watching the destruction of the Empire's most powerful warship. The victory was theirs, but it came at a cost. Many human ships had been damaged, and the Sovereign had taken a beating, but humanity had proven its strength. "We did it," Hale whispered, her voice filled with awe. Creed nodded, but he wasn't smiling. The battle was over, but the war for the galaxy was only just beginning. The stars were silent as the wreckage of the Empire's once proud fleet drifted through space. The Sovereign loomed over the battlefield like a giant, its dark form a stark contrast against the shattered remains of enemy warships. The battle had been fierce, but now there was a heavy stillness in the air. Captain Creed stood on the bridge of the Vanguard, his hands clasped behind his back. He didn't smile. The victory was hard-won, but it had come at a great cost. Many of the human ships had been damaged, some of them beyond repair. The Sovereign had taken hits as well, though it had survived, its systems slowly coming back online. "Status report," Creed asked, his voice calm but full of authority. "We've sustained heavy damage, Captain," Lieutenant Hale replied. "But nothing we can't fix. The Sovereign is operational, and the fleet is intact. We've lost a few smaller ships, but we've won. The Empire is broken." Creed nodded, but his eyes never left the view screen. The debris from the battle was everywhere: broken ships, twisted metal, and scattered wreckage. The Empire had been defeated, but what would come next? The victory had shown the galaxy that humanity was not to be underestimated, but it also meant they had made powerful enemies. "The Empire is not done yet," Creed said quietly. "They will regroup. They'll come for us again, and next time, they'll bring more ships, more weapons." Hale turned to him, her expression serious. "Are we ready, Captain? Do you think we can face them again?" Creed turned to face her, his gaze intense. "We have no choice. But now, they know what we're capable of. We showed them that we can stand toe-to-toe with their best. The next time they come, they'll be more cautious." As if on cue, a transmission beeped on the console. It was from the Empire. A message, but no voice. On the screen, a single word appeared: "Surrender." Creed stared at the word for a long moment, his mind working. The Empire was asking for peace, but they had been humiliated. Their pride had been shattered. The message wasn't a true offer of peace. It was a way for them to save face, to stop the bleeding before they were completely destroyed. "Send a response," Creed ordered. "Tell them that humanity will not be anyone's subject. We fight for our freedom, and we will never surrender." Hale nodded and typed the message. A simple, direct response. "The galaxy will learn to respect us. We do not bow down." The transmission was sent, and the crew stood in silence for a moment, knowing that their message had been heard. But the war was not over. The Empire would take time to rebuild, but humanity had shown them that they were no longer a race to be mocked. They were strong, resilient, and ready for whatever came next. As the Vanguard and the fleet slowly moved toward Earth, Captain Creed thought about what lay ahead. The galaxy would never forget the day when humanity stood up against the most powerful empire in the universe. But Creed also knew that this victory was only the beginning. Humanity had earned its place in the stars. but the path ahead would be dangerous. The dust of battle had settled. The once mighty Empire fleet, now reduced to a graveyard of metal, floated in the cold silence of space. The stars in the distance looked peaceful, indifferent to the conflict that had just unfolded in their midst. But on the bridge of the Vanguard, the crew remained alert. Their mission wasn't over. Captain Creed stood at the command console, staring at the massive debris field left in the wake of the battle. The destruction was staggering. Dozens of Empire warships had been destroyed, and many more were disabled. The Sovereign had proven itself a force beyond anything the Empire had expected, but the cost of the victory was heavy. "Report," Creed said, his voice calm but stern. His eyes didn't leave the view screen. "We've lost some ships, Captain," Lieutenant Hale replied. "But we've won. The Empire's forces are in full retreat, and we've received word from several of the systems they controlled. They're surrendering." Creed allowed himself a brief, satisfied nod. The Empire had been humbled, their arrogance shattered, but the victory felt hollow. Their fight had only just begun. "We'll need to consolidate our position," Creed said after a long pause. "Prepare to send a message to the galaxy. Tell them what happened here today. We need to ensure our place in this galaxy. The Empire will rebuild. This isn't over yet." Hale nodded, turning to send the orders to the communication teams. The human fleet was small, and their victory had come at the expense of much of their strength. Yet humanity had proven itself capable of standing against the most powerful empire the galaxy had ever known. The galaxy would soon hear about their victory and the cost of underestimating humans. Creed's mind wandered as he stood on the bridge. The victory over the Empire had earned them respect, but there was still so much to do. The threat of retaliation from the Empire hung heavy in the air, and there were other alien factions in the galaxy it would be watching closely. Some would be allies, others enemies. "Captain," one of the crew members said, breaking his thoughts, "we've received a message from the High Command. They want to discuss the next steps." Creed straightened, his expression hardening. "Put it through." The screen flickered, and soon, an image of General Rax, the leader of the human military command, appeared. The general's face was stern, but there was a hint of respect in his eyes. "Well done, Captain," General Rax said. "We've received your report. You've shown the galaxy that humanity will not be ignored." "We've won, but the war is far from over, sir," Creed replied. "The Empire will rebuild. We need to prepare for that. And there are other factions out there that will be watching." Rax nodded gravely. "You're right. We'll need to be ready. But today, humanity proved its strength. You've earned our place among the stars." The message was clear. Humanity had won a battle, but the war for their survival was ongoing. As the human fleet slowly made its way back toward Earth, Captain Creed knew one thing for certain. The galaxy would never see them as weak again. The human fleet drifted through space, heading back toward Earth. The stars stretched out before them, peaceful and silent, but for the crew aboard the Vanguard, the silence was anything but calming. They had won the battle, but the reality of what lay ahead weighed heavily on their shoulders. Captain Creed stood at the helm, staring out into the dark expanse. The Sovereign was now part of humanity's legacy, a symbol of their strength and resilience. But as the fleet moved closer to Earth, Creed knew that their real challenge was only just beginning. The victory over the Empire had proven humanity's worth, but it had also made them a target. The galaxy would remember what they had done. "Captain, we've received more transmissions," Lieutenant Hale said, her voice steady but filled with urgency. "The galaxy's leaders are already reacting to our victory." Creed turned toward her, his expression unreadable. "What are they saying?" "Some are calling for peace talks," Hale replied, "but others are preparing for conflict. The Empire's allies are not happy with what's happened. They see us as a threat now. The next few days will be crucial." Creed knew the road ahead would not be easy. The Empire would rebuild. New alliances would form, and enemies would emerge. But humanity had proven something today, that they were a force to be reckoned with. They weren't a small, weak race anymore. They had shown the galaxy their strength. Send out a message, Creed ordered. Tell the galaxy that humanity will stand tall. We don't seek war, but we will defend ourselves. The time for underestimating us is over. The message was sent, broadcasting across the stars. It was a simple statement, one filled with strength and resolve. Humanity was no longer afraid. They had earned their place among the stars, and they would fight to protect it. As the message was sent, Creed turned back to the window, his gaze softening. For the first time in a long while, he allowed himself a moment of reflection. The battle had been hard, and the cost had been high, but humanity had triumphed. They had proven that no empire, no matter how powerful, could keep them down. The Sovereign was their greatest achievement. It had turned the tide of the war and secured humanity's future. But it wasn't just the ship that had brought them victory. It was the spirit of the humans who had fought for it, who had risked everything for a better future. Captain, Hale said, interrupting his thoughts. We're nearing Earth. The people will want to know what happened. Creed nodded. Prepare a report. Let the people know that their future is secure. We've shown the galaxy who we are. As the fleet entered Earth's atmosphere, the crew stood at attention, ready to return home after the long journey. The galaxy had learned what humanity was capable of, and the universe would never be the same. They had fought for their survival, and now they had earned their place among the stars.